If you're listening to this, you've probably done the diets, lost the weight, and watch it return. This is Before Dieting, and I'm your host, Bronwyn Fletcher. If nothing seems to hold, it's not because you lack willpower. It's because the focus has been too narrow and centered only on what you eat. Yes, food matters, but the real issue lies deeper. In this podcast, I use systems thinking to explore how women's food stories reveal the true cause behind their weight struggles. These stories show how food choices and eating patterns form and what keeps them running. To make lasting change, you need both the facts of the problem and the story that explains them. That's where the real solutions can be found. Before Dieting drops new episodes every Tuesday, so let's begin with today's. In today's episode, you'll meet Amy. Her story shows how food and weight and life can become tightly woven together over time. Like many women, Amy has spent more than half her life trying to lose weight. Now in her 50s, she's taller and with a larger frame than most women. As we got into the conversation, Amy shared that her mother, who has never been overweight, was recently diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Now, because of her own weight, Amy feels even more pressure to bring her own weight down, fearing the same fate. She stresses how much she wants to lose weight and goes on to describe a weight loss history full of named diets, meal replacements, weight loss groups, and gym memberships that have been a regular part of her life for the last 2 decades. She has lost track of how much time and how many thousands of dollars it has cost her. Yet despite the small amount of success she has had, she keeps an open mind and is willing to give anything a try. When I asked Amy to take me back to where she thinks the problem began, she laughed and said, "How far back do you want me to go?" I say, all the way back to your origin family. Amy describes growing up the youngest of 3 children with a brother 5 years older who eats like a horse and just burns it off. She also has a sister 2 years older who is of average height and weight and doesn't seem overly interested in food. By the time Amy was 8, she stood a head taller and weighed 5 kilograms more than her older sister, and she always recalls being hungry. When she was 10, after being taunted at school about her weight, her mother cut down the amount of food in her lunchbox and switched her to low-calorie snacks. At the age of 13, her mother took her to the family doctor to prescribe something to suppress her appetite. The doctor refused and recommended they seek help from a dietitian, so her mother wasn't happy with that, so she came up with a different solution. And when the family sat down to eat, everyone ate their meal on usual-sized dinner plates, except Amy, whose meal was served on a plate not much bigger than a saucer. Amy was also not given pocket money as her parents didn't trust her not to spend it on food. So it was around this time that Amy started stealing food. Because she was constantly hungry, when no one was looking, she would take anything she could from the pantry or the fridge. Amy learned pretty quickly that her appetite, and by extension, she, was something to be ashamed of. When she moved away from home at 18, she remembers thinking, "Never again is anyone going to tell me what I can and can't eat." Now that she could make her own choices, Amy made up for everything that had been withheld. She celebrated her freedom with over-catered dinners, takeaways, and many treats. Whatever she wanted, she just ate. Junk food became a luxury, then an obsession, and eventually her enemy. Between the ages of 18 and 25, her weight climbed steadily. After years of eating without boundaries, she reached a weight that frightened even her. What began as eating to soothe her rage had turned into a fight against herself and her body. As she said, "I'd always been big, but at that time I felt like I was suffocating under all that fat." By Amy exploring her entire food story instead of narrowing it to the results from her last dieting efforts, it opens up all sorts of alternate solutions. She had so little access and agency around food in childhood. Amy never developed basic skills like portion sizing, understanding nutrition, or being able to manage her hunger. These are essential foundational skills for weight loss, ones that a qualified dietitian was able to help Amy with. Listening to Amy's story, one thing becomes clear, that lasting weight change isn't just about food or dieting history. It's about uncovering how eating becomes entangled with identity, control, and even survival. What we explored in this episode goes well beyond meal plans. It's about the forces that shaped Amy's relationship with food in the first place. Real change happens when you unpack the story behind the pattern. That's what we've done today with Amy. You've heard how food became a way she managed life in ways that no diet could ever reach. Yet when you know your story, you can have more success with weight loss. But the reverse isn't true. If you don't know your story, it will trip you up. It'll take over and become the reason you abandon every diet. So in this episode, I've used the lens of systems thinking to unravel what's really going on, not just the facts, but how they connect together. Because to solve a repeating weight pattern, you need both. You need the hard data and you need the lived story. And until that backstory is part of the plan, no diet can ever solve it. Thanks for listening. I'll be back with another ep next week. Let's finish with Amy's words because they say everything this episode was really about.
I'd been performing the fat people a jolly act, making jokes about my size before anyone else could. I even turned the dinner plate story into a punchline, but every time I laughed, I was abandoning myself. I'm a big person, not a bad person.